What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is that you don't act like you deserve it yet? Not your talent, not your time, not your circumstances, just that. Think about it for a moment. Really think. You've rehearsed the conversation 100 times, but stayed silent when the moment came. You knew you were qualified, but didn't raise your hand. You had the idea first, but waited for someone else to say it out loud. And afterward, lying awake at 2 a.m., replaying everything, you asked yourself the same question. Why didn't I just go for it? That's not a talent problem. That's not a confidence problem. That's an identity problem. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. Because here's what most people never say out loud. The version of you that keeps waiting, waiting to feel ready, waiting for permission, waiting for someone to finally say you're enough. That version is not protecting you. It is costing you. Every single day. I know this because I've been that person. I remember sitting in my car outside a job interview in downtown Chicago, engine off, hands on the wheel, watching other people walk through that building's glass doors like they owned the place. I had prepared for weeks. I knew the material cold, but something inside me kept whispering, "You're not ready. This is a stretch. Who do you think you are?" I almost drove away. I almost let that moment pass, the way I had let 100 moments pass before it, but I didn't. I made a decision. Not a confident decision. Not a perfect one, just a decision. To walk in, to carry myself like the person who already had the job, to act as if I belonged in that room, not because I felt it, but because I chose it. That choice didn't just change the outcome of one interview. It changed how I understood the way human beings actually transform. Here's the truth. Your brain cannot fully separate a vividly imagined action from a real one. When you act with intention, even before the results show up, you are literally building the neural architecture of the person you're becoming. The way you act shapes who your mind believes you are, before the proof arrives. That's not wishful thinking, that's neuroscience. And it means this: you don't wait to become. You act as if you already are, and your mind, your habits, your choices, your entire sense of self will follow. That's what these next 60 minutes are about. Across 8 chapters, I'm going to walk with you through exactly how ordinary people, my friend Marcus, my colleague Sarah, a woman named Linda I met at a seminar in Austin, Texas, used one single shift in how they acted to completely change who they became. Not by waiting for the right moment, not by waking up one day magically confident, but by moving first and letting the mind catch up. We'll talk about deciding before you're ready, moving like the person you're becoming, rewriting the voice inside your head, building the right environment, surviving the breaking point, and there will be one, stacking small wins into unshakable belief, holding the standard when no one is watching, and finally, the chapter you'll need to earn the day you stop acting, because you've become. 8 chapters, 8 decisions, 1 direction. Before we begin, think of someone in your life who is playing smaller than they should, someone who keeps waiting, someone sitting in their own version of a parked car right now, engine off, almost driving away. Send them this. Don't wait until the end. Do it now before the moment passes. Because that one share might be the thing that changes everything for them. The person you're becoming is already waiting. It's time to go meet them. Chapter 1. Decide before you're ready. Readiness is a feeling, and feelings, left unchecked, will lie to you every single time. Here's what nobody tells you about readiness. It doesn't show up before the decision. It shows up because of the decision. You don't get ready and then move. You move, and readiness builds in your bones as you go. Most people have it backwards. They're waiting for a green light that was never going to turn on by itself. They're waiting to feel qualified enough, experienced enough, certain enough. And while they wait, life doesn't pause. Opportunities don't hold. The window opens and closes. And they're still standing at the door asking themselves if now is the right time. It never feels like the right time. That's not a sign to stop. That's just how beginning feels. Think about the first time you drove a car on a highway. You weren't ready. Your hands gripped the wheel too tight. You kept checking the mirrors every 4 seconds. You probably moved to the right lane and stayed there because it felt safer. But you drove. You made the decision to pull out of that parking lot and merge into traffic. And something shifted. Not immediately, not perfectly, but it shifted. 10 minutes in, your grip loosened. 20 minutes in, you changed lanes. By the end of that drive, your body had learned something your mind could never have taught it from a standstill. That's what deciding before readiness does. It puts you in motion, And motion teaches you things that preparation never can. Now ask yourself honestly, how many times have you been that driver still sitting in the parking lot? Not because you couldn't drive, but because you kept telling yourself the road wasn't ready for you yet. That internal loop has a name. Psychologists call it analysis paralysis. But I want to give it a more honest name today. It's called permission seeking. And it is quietly costing you everything. You're not waiting for the right moment. You're waiting for someone, or something, to finally say, you're enough. You're ready. Go. And here's the brutal truth. That signal is never coming from the outside. The permission to begin was always yours to give. I want to tell you about Marcus. Marcus and I have been friends since college. Smart, sharp, one of the most capable people I know. For 3 years after graduation, he worked a mid-level analyst role at a firm in downtown Chicago. Good pay, stable hours, safe. But every time a senior position opened up internally, Marcus didn't apply. He had a reason ready every single time. I need 1 more year of experience. I need to finish this certification. I need to wait for the next cycle. One evening, we were sitting at a diner on Michigan Avenue. Marcus had just talked himself out of applying for a senior manager role, again. And I asked him a simple question. What would you do differently if you already had the job? He went quiet for a long time. Then he said, I'd speak up more in meetings. I'd take ownership of projects instead of waiting to be assigned. I'd carry myself differently. I looked at him and said, then start doing that, starting tomorrow. He pushed back. But I don't have the title yet. And I said, the title doesn't teach you those behaviors. Those behaviors earn you the title. 3 weeks later, not 3 years, 3 weeks, Marcus submitted the application. He told me afterward that something felt different the moment he decided. Not confident exactly, but committed. Like he had stepped off a ledge he had been standing on for 3 years. He got the offer that spring. Corner office, 34th floor. The same role he had talked himself out of applying for 4 times in a row. The only thing that changed was the decision. Here's the principle. Hold on to this one. Confidence is not a prerequisite for action. It is a byproduct of it. Every time you do something before you feel ready, your brain updates its understanding of what you're capable of. The fear doesn't disappear because the stakes got smaller. It shrinks because your evidence base got larger. You are training your mind, one decided action at a time, to believe you can handle more. Not by thinking about it, by doing it. And that's exactly what Marcus figured out at that diner. Not a strategy, not a 5-year plan. Just one decision, made before he felt ready, that set everything else in motion. Now it's your turn to make that same call. Here's what I want you to do. 3 things, starting today. Not this weekend, not after you finish this audio. Today. First, name one decision you've been putting off. Not the biggest one on your list. Just one. The one that's been sitting in the back of your mind, waiting for the right moment. Write it down. Say it out loud. Give it a name, because unnamed fears stay comfortable in the dark. Second, ask yourself Marcus's question. What would I do differently if I already had this? Write down what the decided version of you would do. How they would carry themselves. What they would stop waiting for. That list is not a fantasy, it's a blueprint. Third, take one action from that list before today is over. Not the whole list. 1. The smallest possible step that signals, to yourself, to no one else, that you've made the decision. Make one call, send one email. Show up to one thing you've been avoiding. Not perfectly, just decisively. Because here's what that moment does, that small, quiet, unseen action. It plants a seed. Not in the world, in you. It starts building the evidence your mind needs to believe you are someone who moves, someone who doesn't wait for permission, someone who decides. You're not the same person who sat in the parking lot anymore. You're the person who drove. Decide first. The proof will follow. Chapter 2. Move like the person you're becoming. Your body is always telling a story. The question is, which story is it telling right now? Before you say a single word in a room, people have already formed an impression of you. Not based on your resume, not based on your credentials, based on how you walked in, how you held yourself, whether your shoulders were open or closed, whether your eyes moved with purpose or darted with uncertainty, whether you took up space or apologized for existing in it. Most people think presence is something you either have or you don't, a gift, a personality trait, something the naturally confident were born with, and the rest of us just have to admire from a distance. That is completely wrong. Presence is not a trait. It's a practice, and your body is the instrument you practice it on. every single day, whether you're paying attention or not. Here's the part that changes everything. Your body doesn't just follow your mind follows your body. That connection runs both directions. The way you carry yourself sends a constant signal, not just to the people around you, but directly back to your own brain. When you sit collapsed, your brain reads that signal and concludes, "We're not ready for this." When you stand open, grounded, deliberate, your brain reads that too, and it adjusts accordingly. Researchers at Northwestern University found that what you wear and how you physically present yourself directly affects your cognitive performance. Not just your mood, but your actual thinking. They called it enclothed cognition. The clothes, the posture, the physical choices you make, they shape the mental state that follows. In other words, you can act your way into a new mindset. You cannot think your way there. Let me tell you about Sarah. Sarah is someone I've known for most of my adult life. Bright, driven, the kind of person who could hold her own in any room. In the spring of a particularly hard year, her company downsized and she was let go. Not because of performance. The entire division was cut. But the result was the same. One Thursday afternoon she was employed. The following Monday she wasn't. What Sarah did next surprised everyone who knew her. Every morning she woke up at her usual time. She got dressed. Not in sweats, not in whatever was comfortable, but in the clothes she would have worn to the office. Blazer, good shoes, the whole thing. She sat down at her kitchen table in their apartment in Brooklyn at 7:30 a.m., opened her laptop and worked. Reached out to contacts, refined her skills, built things, treated those hours like they belonged to someone who still had somewhere important to be. Nobody saw her do this. There was no audience, no one to perform for. When I asked her why, she said something I've never forgotten. I couldn't let myself become someone who gave up in sweatpants, because that person, the one who stopped showing up, she would have been much harder to come back from. 6 weeks later, Sarah had a new role, better title, 18% higher salary than her previous position. But here's what mattered more than any of that. She told me she never lost herself in those 6 weeks. Never felt the slow erosion that comes when you stop acting like the person you're trying to be. The outside world hadn't changed. She had held the identity in place until the world caught up. That's the practice. That's what this chapter is about. You cannot think your way into a new identity. You have to act your way in, and acting your way in starts with the most immediate physical available right now thing you have: your body, your posture, your pace. The way you enter a room, the way you sit at a desk when no one is watching. These are not small things. These are the signals that train your nervous system, and everyone around you, about who you are. Here's what most people do wrong. They wait until they feel confident before they change how they carry themselves. They think, when I get the promotion, I'll walk differently. When I lose the weight, I'll stand taller. When I have more money, I'll dress like someone who does. But that equation is backwards. The feeling follows the behavior, not the other way around. Think about an actor preparing for a role. A great actor doesn't wait to emotionally feel like their character before they start moving like them. They put on the costume, they adjust their walk, they change how they use their hands. And through that physical commitment, the emotional reality follows. It's not fake. It's a methodology, a deliberate practice of becoming. You have access to that same methodology right now, today. So here's what I'm asking you to do. And I want you to take this seriously, because it sounds simple, and it is anything but. Tomorrow morning, before you do anything else, make 3 deliberate physical choices. First, your posture. The moment your feet hit the floor, stand up straight, shoulders back and open. Chin level. Not military stiff, just open. Take up the space your body is entitled to. Hold it for 60 seconds before you do anything else. This is not a warm-up. This is a declaration. Second, your pace. When you move through your home, your office, your street, slow down by about 20%. Not slow like you have nowhere to go. Slow like you have decided where you're going, and you own the path. People who rush signal anxiety. People who move with deliberate pace signal authority. You don't need a title for this. You just need a decision. Third, one external choice that belongs to the person you're becoming. Maybe it's how you dress. Maybe it's cleaning your workspace before you sit down. Maybe it's putting your phone face down before a meeting instead of glancing at it every 3 minutes. Choose one physical signal, small, specific, yours, and hold it with intention all day, not for anyone else, for the version of you that you're building. Because here's what Sarah understood that most people don't. You don't wait to feel like that person before you start moving like them. You move like them consistently and without apology until one morning you realize the performance has become reality. The body leads, the mind follows. Look like who you're becoming before you're there. Chapter 3. Rewrite the voice inside your head. The most dangerous voice in your life doesn't belong to your harshest critic. It doesn't belong to the person who doubted you, dismissed you, or told you that you weren't enough. It belongs to you. And it has been running in the background. It's quiet, constant, relentless, for as long as you can remember, telling you what you are, telling you what you're not, deciding before you've even tried what you're capable of and what belongs to someone else. Most people never question this voice. They just assume it's telling the truth. It isn't. Here's what that voice actually is. It's a habit, or a deeply worn groove in your thinking, carved by years of repetition, reinforced by old fears, shaped by things people said to you long ago that you never chose to believe but absorbed anyway. It feels like truth because you've heard it so many times. But frequency is not the same as accuracy. The voice in your head is not a verdict. It's a pattern, and patterns can be changed. Think about the last time you were about to do something that stretched you. Ask for the promotion. Introduce yourself to someone you admired. Send the email you'd been drafting for 3 days. What happened in the 3 seconds before you acted? That voice showed up. Maybe it said, "You're going to embarrass yourself." Maybe it said, "They won't take you seriously." Maybe it was quieter than that. Just a subtle pulling back, a sudden need to check your phone, a reason why now wasn't quite the right time. That's not instinct. That's not wisdom. That's an old recording playing on a loop, and you've been mistaking it for your own thoughts. I want to tell you about Derek. Derek and I worked at the same consulting firm in Seattle for 3 years. Brilliant analyst. The kind of person who could walk into a room of data and find the story in it within minutes. But outside of his spreadsheets, Derek had a phrase he used constantly. So constantly that it had become invisible to him. In meetings, in hallways, even in casual conversation, he would say, "I'm not really a people person." He said it as a fact, like his eye color or his height, something fixed and settled. One afternoon, after he'd said it again in front of a client, almost apologetically, as if to explain in advance why he shouldn't be listened to, I pulled him aside and asked him a question that made him uncomfortable. "When did you decide that?" He didn't have an answer, because he hadn't decided it. He had inherited it from a teacher who called him shy in the 4th grade, from a family dinner where someone laughed at something he'd said, from a handful of awkward moments that his mind had assembled over years into a story called "This Is Who I Am." And he had repeated that story to himself and everyone around him so many times that it had become structural, load-bearing. He built his behavior on top of it without ever checking whether the foundation was true. So Derek tried something, small and uncomfortable and deeply unglamorous. He stopped saying it. Not because he suddenly felt like a people person. Not because he'd done some breakthrough inner work. Simply because he made a decision, quietly on a Tuesday morning, that he would stop feeding that particular story with the most powerful tool available to it, his own words. Within 60 days, his manager noticed a shift. By the end of that quarter, Derek was leading client presentations. Not because his personality had transformed, because the story he was telling himself, and everyone else, had changed. And behavior followed story, the way it always does. That is the principle at the center of this chapter. The story you tell yourself becomes the container of your life. You will not consistently act outside the boundaries of what you believe is true about you, which means that rewriting the voice isn't self-deception. It's the most practical thing you can do. It is clearing the path so the person you're becoming can actually walk through it. Research from Ethan Cross at the University of Michigan found that when people shift from self-talk in the first person, "I can't do this, I'm not ready," to the third person using their own name or the word you, anxiety drops, performance under pressure improves, and the internal critic loses some of its grip. The distance creates perspective, and perspective is where change begins. You are not just the thinker of your thoughts, you can be the observer of them too, and observers have choices that thinkers sometimes forget they have. Here's what I want you to practice. 3 things starting today. First, audit. 1 phrase, just one. Think about a label you use regularly to describe yourself, in your head or out loud, that limits what you reach for. "I'm not the kind of person who," or "I've never been good at," or "That's just not me." Find one. Write it down. Look at it. Ask yourself, when did I decide this? Did I decide this, or did I absorb it? Second, replace it. Not with something you don't believe yet. That kind of forced affirmation tends to backfire because your brain knows when it's being lied to. Replace it with something in motion. Not, I am confident if confidence feels like a stretch. Instead, I am someone who is learning to show up fully. Not, I am a great communicator, but I am getting better at speaking my mind. Present tense, active. True enough to feel real, open enough to grow into. Third, catch the loop. For the next 7 days, every time you hear that old voice start up, every time you feel yourself pulling back, making yourself smaller, preemptively apologizing for taking up space, notice it. Name it. You don't have to argue with it. You don't have to silence it. Just say quietly to yourself, that's the old recording, and choose what you say next. Because here's what Derek figured out, and what I want you to hold on to long after this chapter ends. You have been the narrator of your own story since the day you started forming sentences. Most of what you believe about yourself was written by other people, in other times, under circumstances that no longer apply. You are the only one who can pick up the pen now. Speak to yourself like someone worth believing in. Chapter 4. Build your environment before you need it. You will not outthink your environment, not consistently, not over the long run. Not when willpower is low, the day has been hard, and every easy choice is pointing in the wrong direction. Most people believe that transformation is a matter of wanting it badly enough. That if you just care enough, try hard enough, stay motivated enough, you'll push through whatever surrounds you and become who you're meant to be. It's a compelling idea. And it is almost entirely wrong. Because willpower is a resource, it depletes. And no matter how strong yours is, it was never designed to fight your environment every single day indefinitely. The people who change, and stay changed, don't win through sheer force of will. They win because they built a world around them that makes the right choice easier and the wrong choice harder. Environment is not the backdrop of your growth. It is the soil, and you cannot plant a new version of yourself in old, unexamined ground and expect it to take root. Here's what most people do instead. They make a decision, get serious about their health, their career, their discipline, and they bring that new decision into the exact same environment they've always lived in. Same routines, same people, same patterns of time and attention, and then they wonder why, 3 weeks later, the motivation has faded and nothing has changed. The decision was real. The environment swallowed it. This is not a character flaw, it's a design problem, and design problems have design solutions. I want to tell you about something that happened to me in the early days of building a discipline practice that actually stuck. For months, I had been trying to read more, not just scroll articles, but actually read books that required real attention. I'd set intentions every Sunday night. I'd put books on my nightstand. I'd tell myself that this week would be different. And every week, by Wednesday, the book was under a pile of things and I was back on my phone. Then one afternoon I did something small that changed everything. I put my phone in another room. Not permanently, just during the hour I wanted to read. I put it in the kitchen, face down, on silent. I sat in a chair by the window with just the book. And for the first time in months, I actually read. Not because I had more willpower that afternoon. Because I had removed the competition. The environment had been making the choice for me. And the moment I changed the environment, even slightly, even temporarily, the choice became mine again. That's the principle, and it's worth stating plainly. You don't build discipline by fighting your environment. You build it by designing your environment so discipline becomes the default. This applies at every level: physical space, digital space, and the people you spend time with. On that last point, I want to spend a moment, because it's the one people resist most. Research from the famous Framingham Heart Study, a decades-long study originally focused on cardiovascular health, found something that nobody expected. Not just health behaviors, but attitudes, outlook, and even income patterns spread through social networks across 3 degrees of separation. The people you're close to influence you. The people they're close to influence you. And the people one level beyond that still carry measurable influence on your life. This is not about judgment, it's about awareness. When I joined a small mastermind group in Denver, 8 people, all further along than me in areas I was trying to grow, I didn't speak much for the first few months. I mostly listened, but I started noticing something. The questions I asked myself began to change, not because I was trying to think differently, because I was spending time inside a different kind of conversation. The standards I was surrounded by quietly became the standards I held myself to. You absorb more from your environment than you consciously choose to learn. So here's what I want you to do. 3 deliberate moves, starting this week. First, Audit 1. Physical space. Choose the environment where you do the work that matters most to you. Your desk, your home office, your kitchen, wherever it is. Ask yourself, does this space support the person I'm becoming? Or does it support who I've been? One change. Maybe it's removing your phone from the room during focused hours. Maybe it's clearing the surface so your brain isn't processing clutter before it can process anything useful. Maybe it's putting one thing in your line of sight that reminds you of what you're building. One change. Make it today. Second, Audit 1. Digital environment. Look at what you consumed yesterday. The feeds, the channels, the group chats, the notifications. Ask the same question. Does this environment reflect who I'm becoming? Mute one source of noise that doesn't belong in the life you're building. You don't have to make a dramatic announcement. Just quietly remove one thing that's been pulling your attention in the wrong direction. Third, identify one room worth entering. Think about a person, a group, a community, online or in person, that operates at a standard you want to grow into. Not someone to impress. Someone to learn from, to be around, to let shift the baseline of what normal looks like for you. Find that room. Take one step toward entering it this week. You won't outgrow your environment by willpower alone, but you can design it, deliberately, piece by piece, until it starts pulling you forward instead of holding you back. Design your rooms, or your rooms will design you. Chapter 5. When acting as if isn't enough. Nobody warns you about this part. Every book, every podcast, every motivational video tells you the same story. Decide, act, believe, become. And they're not wrong. But they're also not telling you the whole truth. Because there will come a moment, maybe it already has, when you have done all of that. You decided before you were ready. You moved like the person you were becoming. You rewrote the voice in your head. You redesigned your environment. You showed up consistently, day after day, and then something broke. Not because you weren't trying, not because the method was wrong, but because life doesn't pause while you're building yourself. It keeps sending the hard things, the rejection, the setback, the quiet Tuesday when nothing is working, and the gap between who you're acting like and how you actually feel has never seemed wider. That gap is not failure, but it will feel exactly like it. And what you do inside that feeling, that is the chapter most people never finish. I want to be honest with you here, in a way that most people in this space aren't willing to be. The act as if practice is not armor against difficulty. It will not prevent the hard moments. It will not make you immune to doubt or loss or the particular loneliness of doing something that hasn't paid off yet in any visible way. What it does, if you let it, is determine who you are when you hit those moments, not if, when. I want to tell you about Linda. I met Linda at a professional development seminar in Austin, Texas, a 2-day event in a hotel conference room, the kind with bad lighting and coffee that was never quite hot enough. She was sitting 2 seats away from me at a round table, and she introduced herself quietly, without the performative confidence that fills rooms like that. Over lunch on the second day, she told me her story. 2 years before that seminar, Linda had filed for bankruptcy and signed divorce papers on the same Tuesday morning in March, not one or the other. Both. On the same day, in the same week, in the same life she had spent 20 years building. She was 47 years old, living in Austin, and she told me, "I tried everything you're supposed to try. I showed up. I dressed the part. I worked on my mindset. I read the books. I did the morning routines. And then one night I was sitting in my car in a Kroger parking lot at 10 p.m., and I thought, maybe this just doesn't work for people like me." She stopped talking for a moment. Then she said something I want you to hear clearly. But I didn't drive away. She sat in that parking lot. She let herself feel the full weight of it, not rushing past it, not performing her way through it, not reaching for the next productivity hack to outrun what she was feeling. She just sat with it, and then she started her car, drove home. And the next morning, not dramatically, not with sudden certainty, she did one thing. She called a woman she had been too afraid to contact for months, a former colleague who had rebuilt her own business after a financial collapse. They talked for 90 minutes. That call became a partnership. 18 months later, Linda had a 6-figure revenue stream and was preparing to speak at the very kind of event where we had met. I asked her what had changed in that parking lot. She said, "Nothing changed. I just decided that the story wasn't over yet." That is the principle at the center of this chapter, and it is the most important one in this entire audio. The act as if practice does not protect you from falling. It determines who you are when you hit the ground. Martin Seligman's research on learned optimism at the University of Pennsylvania identified something essential. The difference between people who recover from adversity and people who don't is not the severity of what happened to them. It is how they interpret what happened, specifically, whether they see a setback as permanent, pervasive, and personal, or as temporary, specific, and changeable. That interpretive habit is not a fixed trait. It is a learned skill, and it can be practiced. What Linda did in that parking lot, without calling it anything, was choose her interpretation, not denial, not false positivity. A genuine, deliberate choice about what the story meant and whether it was finished. That choice is available to you too. In every hard moment, every gap between effort and result, every night when the distance between who you're becoming and where you currently stand feels unbearable, here is what I want you to hold on to. 3 things specifically. First, name the moment when you last wanted to stop, not to dwell in it, to see it clearly. When was the last time you were in your own version of a parking lot, sitting with something heavy, wondering if it was working, almost deciding to drive away? Write it down, acknowledge it. The moments we don't name have a way of making decisions for us. Second, separate the setback from the story. Ask yourself, is this permanent, or is this a chapter? Is this everywhere, or is this one specific area? Is this about who I am, or is this about what happened? Seligman's research is clear. The people who recover fastest are the ones who can honestly answer those 3 questions without catastrophizing or collapsing. Practice this now before the next hard moment arrives. Third, find your next one thing, not a 5-year plan, not a complete rebuild. Linda made one call. 1. The smallest possible action that said, the story isn't over yet. What is yours? What is the one thing, the call you've been avoiding, the door you haven't knocked on, the conversation you've been postponing, that would signal to yourself that you're still in it? Do that one thing within the next 24 hours. Because the act as if practice was never about performing your way through difficulty. It was always about this, choosing in the hardest moment to keep going. Not because it's easy, because the story isn't over. Chapter 6. Stack the proof. One day at a time. Your brain is not on your side by default. That's not a personal failing. It's biology. The human brain has a negativity bias, a deep evolutionary tendency to weight losses more heavily than gains, to remember what went wrong more vividly than what went right, to scan constantly for threat and shortfall. It kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. In your daily life, trying to build something new and difficult, it works against you every single morning. Here's what this looks like in practice. You have a good day. You make the decision. You show up. You do the work. And then 2 days later, something doesn't go as planned. A setback, a rejection, a day where nothing clicks, and every effort feels like swimming upstream. And in that moment, before you've even consciously processed what happened, your brain has already begun assembling a case against you, pulling up every past failure, connecting the dots toward the conclusion it was looking for. See? This is who you really are. The story it tells is selective. It edits out the progress. It amplifies the stumble. And if you don't have a system to push back, not with false optimism, not with empty affirmations, but with actual documented evidence, you will believe it. This is the practice of stacking proof, and it is one of the most underrated tools in the entire architecture of self-mastery. The idea is simple. Every day you give your brain evidence to work with. Small, real, honest evidence that the person you're becoming is already showing up. In specific moments, on specific days, in small but verifiable ways. You're not trying to trick yourself into confidence. You are building a data set. And over time, that data set becomes the foundation your mind stands on when doubt comes knocking. I started doing this during what I can only describe as the hardest professional season of my life. A project I had poured months into had collapsed. The details don't matter as much as the feeling. That particular combination of exhaustion, embarrassment, and the quiet certainty that you had overestimated yourself. I had made decisions that didn't pan out. People I respected had seen me struggle. And every morning I woke up, my brain was ready with its verdict before I'd even made coffee. A friend suggested something almost embarrassingly small. She said, "Before you go to sleep tonight, write down 3 things you did well today. Not 3 things that went well. 3 things you did. Actions you took, choices you made. Doesn't matter how small." I resisted. It felt trivial next to the scale of what had gone wrong, but I tried it. That first night, sitting at the kitchen table at 11 p.m., I wrote, "I got up at my usual time. I made 1 phone call I had been avoiding. I didn't cancel the meeting I wanted to cancel. Nothing dramatic, nothing impressive, but all of it true. I did it again the next night, and the night after that. By the end of the second week, something had shifted. Not in my circumstances, but in the angle from which my brain was scanning the day. It had started looking for wins, because that's what it was being fed. The negativity bias doesn't disappear, but it can be countered with a consistent, deliberate supply of counter-evidence. By day 30, I had 30 entries. Small, unglamorous, honest. But reading back through them felt different from what I expected. It didn't feel like a highlight reel. It felt like proof. Proof that even in a hard season I had kept showing up. Proof that the person I was trying to become had been there all along, making the small moves, holding the small standards, one day at a time. Teresa Amabile at Harvard Business School spent years studying what actually drives inner motivation in people doing difficult work. What she found surprised even her. The single most powerful driver of motivation and engagement was not recognition, not reward, not leadership quality. It was simply the experience of making progress. Small progress, incremental, sometimes invisible progress, acknowledged and recorded. She called it the progress principle, and it reframes everything. You don't need a dramatic breakthrough to feel momentum. You need to notice the movement. You need to show your brain, regularly and specifically, that you are moving, even when the destination isn't in sight yet. That's what stacking proof does. It doesn't lie to you. It doesn't tell you the hard parts aren't hard. It just refuses to let the hard parts be the only story. Here's what I want you to do, starting tonight. Not tomorrow night, tonight. First, start the 3-win practice. Before you go to sleep, write down 3 things you did today. Not 3 things that happened to you. 3 things you chose, acted on, followed through with. Keep them honest. Keep them small if they are small. The practice only works if it's true. Second, set a 30-day minimum, 1 entry per night, non-negotiable. The compounding effect of this practice doesn't reveal itself in week 1. It reveals itself around day 18, day 22, day 28, when you read back through your own record and realize that the person who showed up on all those days was more consistent, more capable, and more determined than your bad days had been telling you. Third, when doubt comes, and it will, open the record. Don't argue with the voice in your head. Don't try to outthink it. Just show it the data. Point to the days. Here, and here, and here. That's not nothing. That's the person you're becoming. Documented. Your brain believes what you show it repeatedly. Stop showing it only the stumbles. Stack the proof. 1 day, 1 win, 1 brick. Chapter 7. Hold the standard in the dark. Let me ask you something directly. Right now, not in the middle of a challenge, not when someone is watching, not when you have momentum and the energy is high, but right now in the ordinary hours of an ordinary day. What standard are you actually holding? Sus. Not the standard you perform when there's an audience. Not the version of yourself you bring to the moments that feel significant. The standard you keep when no one is watching, when there's no deadline, no accountability partner, no social consequence for letting it slide. That standard, the private one, is the real one. And it is the only one that actually builds anything. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most people never let themselves fully sit with. Character is not built in public. It is revealed there. Everything that shows up in the high-stakes moments, the composure under pressure, the consistency that others admire, the identity that feels solid and earned. All of it was constructed in private. In the quiet hours, in the moments nobody saw and nobody counted. The person you become in those unseen moments is the person who shows up everywhere else. This is the chapter where I stopped being gentle about it. Because somewhere between chapters 1 and 6, you've been building something real. You've decided before you were ready. You've moved with intention. You've started rewriting the voice in your head. You've been stacking the proof day by day, and that is genuinely hard work. You should feel the weight of it. But now comes the question that separates the people who change for a season from the people who change for life. What do you do when no one is watching and every easy option is pointing you toward the comfortable choice? Do you hold the standard? Or do you let it slip, just this once, just a little, just today? I want to tell you about James. James is my cousin. He lives in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. He works as an accountant at a mid-size firm. Not a glamorous job, not a high-profile life. He is not someone you would look at and immediately think, that person has it figured out. But for 4 years, James has run 3 miles every morning at 5:45 a.m., not when it's convenient, every morning, not when the weather cooperates, every morning. He has run in January in Ohio, when the temperature drops to 14 degrees Fahrenheit and the roads are glazed with ice. He ran the morning after his father's funeral. He ran the morning before his daughter's wedding because, in his words, that's just what that morning looked like. He doesn't post about it. He doesn't track it on an app for other people to see. He doesn't do it for validation or admiration or social proof. I asked him once, standing in his driveway after a run, why he still did it after 4 years. He thought about it for a moment. Then he said, "Because the man I'm becoming gets up and runs. That's not negotiable. That's just what he does." He wasn't talking about fitness. He was talking about identity. And that is the thing about private discipline that most people miss. It is not about the specific action, the run, the early start, the commitment you keep when no one is holding you to it. It is about what that action tells you about yourself. Every time you hold the standard in the dark, you deposit something into your own sense of who you are. Not a big deposit, not a dramatic one. Just a small, clear, unambiguous signal. I am someone who does what I said I would do. Do that enough times in private, without an audience, and something shifts. Not your circumstances, not your opportunities. You. The person who wakes up becomes harder to argue with. More difficult to talk out of the right thing. More naturally aligned with the actions that produce the life you want. B.J. Fogg at Stanford has spent years studying behavior design. One of his central findings is this: behaviors that are repeated in private, without external reward, without social reinforcement, are significantly more likely to become stable identity-level traits than behaviors performed for external recognition. The private repetition roots deeper. It becomes who you are, not just what you do, which means the unwitnessed moments are not the small ones. They are the foundational ones. So here is the confrontation I want to offer, directly, without softening it. Think about the last week, the private hours, the moments when no one was watching and the easy choice was available. Did you hold the standard you said you were holding? Or did you negotiate with yourself, find a reason to make an exception, tell yourself you would make up for it later? Not to judge, to diagnose. Because the gap between the person you perform in public and the person you are in private is the exact size of the work still ahead of you. And closing that gap, not by lowering the public standard, but by raising the private one, is how identity becomes real. Here's what I want you to do. One commitment, non-negotiable. Choose one thing, just one, that the person you are becoming does consistently, not when motivated, not when the conditions are right, every day. In private, without applause. Make it specific. Make it small enough to actually do, and then hold it, not because someone will notice, but because you will. Because the man or woman you're working to become, they hold the standard in the dark. That's where character lives. Private discipline, public results. Chapter 8. The day you stop acting. There will be a morning. You won't know it's coming. It won't announce itself. There will be no dramatic moment, no clear before and after, no single event you can point to and say, that's when it happened. It will just be a Tuesday. Or a Thursday. An ordinary morning with ordinary light coming through the window. And you'll realize somewhere between waking up and making coffee that you're not performing anymore. The decision isn't effortful. The posture doesn't require reminding. The voice in your head isn't the critic. Or if it is, you notice it the way you'd notice background noise in a coffee shop. Present, not powerful. You are just you. The version of you that you've been building. Without the scaffolding. Without the daily rehearsal. Without the constant low-level tension of trying to act like someone you weren't sure you were yet. You've become. This chapter is about that morning. And more importantly, it's about understanding what actually gets you there. Because most people have a fundamentally incorrect picture of how identity change works. And that incorrect picture is why so many people start strong, hold the standard for a while, and then quietly drift back to who they were. Here is the truth that most people don't want to hear. It takes longer than you think, not because you're doing it wrong, not because you lack discipline or desire or the right environment, but because that's simply how the human brain forms new automatic behavior. Research from University College London found that on average, it takes 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic, not 21 days as the popular myth suggests. And depending on the complexity of the behavior and the depth of the old pattern it's replacing, it can take significantly longer. 66 days for one behavior. The gap between acting as if and being is not a gap of effort, it's a gap of time. And patience, real patience, the kind that holds the standard even when nothing seems to be changing, is not passive. It is one of the most active, demanding things you will ever practice. I want to tell you about a moment that happened on an otherwise unremarkable Wednesday morning. I was getting ready for a meeting. The kind of meeting that 2 years earlier would have triggered an entire internal weather system. Doubt, rehearsal, the quiet but persistent question of whether I actually belonged in the room. I had spent months building the things we've talked about in this audio, deciding before I was ready, moving with intention, rewriting the voice, stacking the proof, holding the standard in the quiet hours when no one was watching. And on this Wednesday, standing in front of the mirror, putting on my jacket, I noticed something. I wasn't running through the script. I wasn't managing my internal state. I wasn't coaching myself through the next 2 hours. I was just getting ready. The way someone gets ready when they know, not believe, not hope, not act as if, but know that they belong where they're going. I stood there for a moment, a little surprised, and then I smiled. Not because the meeting was going to go perfectly, but because the version of me that was walking into that room had stopped being a performance. That's the shift, and you cannot rush it, but you can trust it. Here is what I want you to understand about that moment, and about the moment that is waiting for you on the other side of the work you're doing. It doesn't arrive because you finally feel ready. It arrives because you stop needing to. You've made enough decisions, moved enough times before the confidence was there, rewritten the story enough mornings that the old story no longer has automatic authority, stacked enough proof that doubt has to work harder to make its case, held the standard in the dark enough nights that it has stopped feeling like effort and started feeling like identity. That's the compounding. That's what all the invisible work was building. Marcus called me one morning, 2 years after that text message at 11:47 p.m., 2 years after submitting the application, 2 years after getting the offer. He was sitting in his office on the 34th floor overlooking the Chicago River. It was 7:23 in the morning before the rest of the team had arrived. He said something I've thought about many times since. He said, "I don't have to remind myself anymore. I used to have to remind myself every day. Act like you belong, hold the standard, speak up. Now I just do it. I don't even notice. It's just who I am." That's the day you stop acting. Not the day you get the office. Not the day the outcome confirms the decision. The day the behavior becomes identity. The day the gap closes, not because the world changed, but because you did. Here is your practice for this chapter. It is simple, and it is the one you have to hold through everything. Don't stop. Not on the days when nothing seems to be shifting. Not on the days when the old version of yourself feels louder than the new one. Not on the days when the proof feels thin and the doubt feels thick. Keep making the decision. Keep moving with intention. Keep rewriting the story. Keep stacking the wins, however small. Keep holding the standard when no one is watching. Because somewhere in the repetition, somewhere in the unremarkable accumulation of one decided action after another, the threshold gets crossed, and you won't be performing anymore. You'll just be the person you decided to become. Keep going, your mind is catching up. We started this journey with a question. What if the only thing standing between you and the life you want is that you don't act like you deserve it yet? 60 minutes ago, that question may have felt uncomfortable, maybe even a little accusatory. But I hope that by now, having walked through 8 chapters together, it feels like something else entirely. Not a challenge, an invitation. Let me take a moment to walk back through what we built. In Chapter 1, we talked about deciding before you're ready. Because readiness doesn't arrive before the decision, it arrives because of it. In Chapter 2, we learned that the body leads and the mind follows, that you can act your way into a new identity before you think your way there. Chapter 3 showed us that the voice in our heads is not the truth. It's a habit, and habits can be changed, one deliberate word at a time. In Chapter 4, we talked about environment, that you cannot outgrow the rooms you refuse to change. Chapter 5 brought us to the hardest moment, the breaking point, the parking lot at 10 p.m., the night when everything you've built feels like it isn't enough. And we learned that the practice doesn't protect you from falling. It determines who you are when you hit the ground. Chapter 6 gave us the tool for the long road. Stack the proof. One win, one day, one brick. Chapter 7 confronted us directly. Because character is not built in public, it is revealed there. And everything revealed in public was built in the private hours when no one was watching. And Chapter 8 brought us here. To the morning, you stop acting. Because you've become. 8 chapters, 8 decisions, 1 direction. Now here is what I want to ask of you. Not as a listener, but as someone who has just spent this time doing something most people never do. You sat with something uncomfortable. You stayed with it. You let it land. That matters. So here is your 30-day challenge. Starting today, not this weekend, not when the timing is better, today. Every morning before you open your phone, read one sentence out loud, just one. The sentence you wrote back in Chapter 1. I act as if I am someone who blank. Read it, mean it. Then do one thing, the smallest possible action of that person, before the day pulls you in every other direction. Do that for 30 days. Not perfectly, consistently. And on day 30, come back. Read back through what you wrote. Look at who showed up in those 30 days when the audience was just you. I think you'll surprise yourself. To Marcus, Sarah, Derek, Linda, and James, the real people in these stories whose honesty made these chapters possible. This was built on what you were willing to share. That courage isn't small, and to you, listening to this right now, wherever you are, I want you to know something genuinely. Your presence here matters. Not to the algorithm, not to a view count. The fact that you chose to spend 60 minutes building yourself instead of scrolling, instead of waiting, instead of letting another day pass, that is already the practice. That is already the person. If this reached you today, please subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if it reached someone you know, someone you've been thinking about while listening, someone who might be sitting in their own parked car right now, send it to them. That one share could be the thing that changes the trajectory of a life. We'll see you in the next one. Act as if you've already won. Your mind will follow.